Hi, I'm Tom Collins, Executive Director of the Arizona Citizens Clean Elections Commission. We're here today with Christine Thompson, who is a attorney and former head of the State Board of Education here in Arizona, as well as a longtime expert on education policy. And we're here today to talk a little bit about education and as it pertains to our upcoming election. The Clean Elections Commission commissioned a poll recently of a survey of voters around Arizona in different regions and different parties to identify issues that voters want to hear more about. And so we thought that, and voters said that education was an issue that was important to them. And so we thought it would be great to have Christine, who is a recognized expert in all these areas and a longtime Arizona education policy person, talk about them. So Christine, I thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Tom.
Long introduction, but one of the things that voters say is that education continues to be a concern on both sides of the aisle and around different regions of the state. Why do you think, or what are the ways in which the state policymakers, governor, legislators deal with education? What's the nexus there?
There are so many elected offices that are critical to education, all the way from, the governor down to elected school board members. The governor really sets the tone as the governor proposes a budget, kind of leads the efforts, the political efforts of the state to keep the eye on the ball on education issues. We have a state superintendent of public instruction that's elected that executes the policies that are adopted by the State Board of Education that's appointed by the governor. We have local elected officials. There are boards that are elected to run the career and technical education districts, the community college districts. Every school board in the state has an elected board that oversees the policies for each of those institutions. And then you have elections for things like bonds and overrides that have taxing implications on for homeowners and for really everyone in the state. So there are all of those pieces that are really critical in the elections process. I think too that one of the things that I've seen over the years is I've watched the political landscape is one of the other issues that's critically important to voters is jobs in the economy. And there's a nexus between education and jobs in the economy because education, early education, K-12, post-secondary education, community colleges, trade schools, universities, all of those things are a talent pipeline directly to businesses and jobs in the economy, and they're all really intertwined and interlinked.
Yeah, so this election, we're going to be in the primary election, and then the general election, we're going to be electing a governor, we're going to be electing a superintendent of public instruction, we're going to be electing the entire legislature. One of the things that voters talk about when we asked, what issues in education they care about was teacher pay.
Right.
How do those state offices? What's their role in addressing issues like teacher pay?
It all comes down to funding and budget. I think that we've seen investments in our state schools. While some would argue they've increased mightily, and they have increased over the last number of years, they still lag behind our peers in other states. And when you think about it framed in really kind of a jobs and economy type of framework, we're competing for talent in our schools, not just to hire teachers, but we're competing with people who have degrees, potentially advanced degrees, who can move on to other areas. So what it really comes down to often is budget. And then secondly, the budgets proposed by the governor, the legislature works its magic during the year, and this year eventually will adopt a state budget that impacts every school. But if we put the budget issues aside, which are massive, I mean, teacher pay, the way you get pay for teachers is money, and the place where money comes from is the state budget. The other issue that's incredibly important is really the respect we have for the profession, and really appreciating that teachers have an incredibly important role, educators have an incredibly important role in the lives of students, and making sure that we're not overburdening them with at times what seems like reasonable pieces of legislation. But when we think about what their day ends up looking like, and how their ability to deliver instruction, what they're trained to do, is limited by some of those mandates, that can also be challenging. So I think asking questions about how someone as a legislator or a gubernatorial candidate will support teachers, listen to families and students to address those issues, really understand what's underlying our teacher recruitment and retention crisis. All of those things are really important to understand how they're inextricably intertwined with each other. And it's not just somebody else's responsibility to find more money in the couch cushions, but really to look at how we can expand the pie and invest in the state's critical infrastructure in all our schools, from early education all the way through our post-secondary institutions.
Sure. So, one of the other things that we found in our poll and in the survey, and I think that this is something that reflects maybe the diversity of the state in terms of we're both a state with a substantial population that's sort of my age and above, and then we have a substantial population that's younger with kids in school. That's something that we don't necessarily hear a lot about directly, but how does that differences in where people are in their lives, affect their opinions about different education issues?
Absolutely. I mean, this is something that's always been fascinating to me, because sometimes when you look at the polling, you won't see early education resonate. But let me tell you, I am of a vintage where many of my peers don't have young children, but I do. Yeah. And things like daycare or early childhood education, those of us who went through the pandemic, really with our kids here at home being the tech support and teachers and everything else to our kids as they tried to do virtual school, we have and anybody who managed those people understands the critical importance of early childhood education, of safe places, of schools, of safe places for people to have their children to thrive and to learn. I think people who are a little bit farther away don't necessarily understand those challenges at some point. So I think really making sure you're asking questions. I think for those of us who are neck deep in it, to make sure our voices are heard as part of that process is really important, to remind people that there are generational differences in how things are handled these days. We don't have a parent necessarily at home taking care of a kid immediately after school. We need after school programs to support to watch after kids as they as parents have two working families. We need really robust early childhood education programs so that parents can get back to work or to increase their own education in order to skill up and really grow the economy. And I think that those voices are really necessary as part of the conversation. So ensuring not just that other voters are aware of those issues, but also ensuring we have a diverse group of people running for office who have links to those issues is going to be really important.
Well, thank you, Christine, for that analysis. I think that's very helpful. And, if you go on our website, and I recommend you do, and check out the survey, you can find there information about the different viewpoints of different people around the state from a variety of different backgrounds. Also, you can look there and see all kinds of information about candidates and our debate series, and you can leave a question for our moderators that you want to see answered. That's all at azcleanelections.gov. Christine, thanks for being here today, and we encourage everybody to take a look at all the information available on our website so you can cast an informed vote. Thank you very much.